The day it all happened, people moved quickly on the streets of Ajegunle, Lagos. Motorcycles zoomed past, splashing muddy water on people walking by. Children in school uniforms held their mothers' hands tightly, dodging puddles. The roadside was full of noise, shouts from traders, crying babies, and the loud honk of buses. Women were selling fruits, vegetables, and snacks under colorful umbrellas. Young boys chased after buses, selling pure water in nylon sachets. It was just another hard day for everyone. But on one small corner of that busy street, something different was happening. A man, wearing old, dirty clothes and shoes that looked like they had walked the world, sat quietly on the ground. His coat was muddy and torn, his beard was long and messy, and his eyes looked tired, like someone who had not slept in many nights. His skin was dry, and there were bruises on his hands. He held a rusty tin plate in his hands, shaking slightly from the cold breeze. People walked past him without even looking at him, as if he was not there. No one stopped. No one cared. "Hello, family. Welcome back. Please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment. It truly means the world to us. Share this video with your friends and loved ones. And be sure to turn on post notifications so you never miss any of our future videos. Thank you so much for the love and support." Then came Blessing. She was just 19 years old, but her eyes carried the weight of someone who had seen too much. Her slippers were worn out, almost falling apart. Her hair was covered with a faded blue scarf, and her dress had patches in different places. She walked slowly, carefully avoiding puddles and broken bottles. Still, she had a kind face and a warm heart. She held a black nylon bag close to her chest. Inside the bag was her only meal for the day, hot rice and beans, carefully packed by her mother, who sold boiled groundnuts under a leaking umbrella nearby. Blessing had been walking fast. Her belly was making loud noises from hunger. She was tired, and all she wanted was to find a quiet place to eat. But as she walked past the man sitting by the broken lamppost, her eyes met his. Just for a second. And that second felt like time had stopped. His eyes looked into hers with a kind of quiet pain that made her heart hurt. She walked past him, but then she stopped. Her feet refused to go forward. She turned around and looked at the man again. Something in her heart told her to go back. She walked slowly toward him. When she got close, she crouched down beside him and smiled gently. "Mister, have you eaten today?" she asked, her voice soft and caring. The man looked at her, but didn't say anything. He just shook his head slowly. His lips were dry, and it looked like he hadn't spoken to anyone in days. Without thinking too much, Blessing opened her nylon bag and brought out the warm plate of rice and beans. The smell was inviting, and steam rose into the air. Her stomach growled even louder now, but she ignored it. "You can have this," she said, offering him the plate. The man looked surprised. His hands trembled as he reached for the food. "Are you sure?" he asked in a hoarse voice. "Yes," Blessing replied with a small smile. "I'll be fine. You need it more than I do." Tears filled the man's eyes. He had begged for food many times, but no one had ever shared with him like this. Most people treated him like dirt. But this young girl, this poor girl, had shown him kindness. He took the food slowly, as if afraid it would disappear. He scooped a spoonful and ate slowly, savoring every bite. Blessing sat beside him on the ground. She didn't care that her dress would get dirty. She watched him eat, feeling something warm in her chest. She didn't know why, but she felt peaceful. "What's your name?" the man asked after a few minutes. "Blessing," she replied. "What about you?" The man paused. "Just call me Uncle Joe." They sat in silence for a while. The street noises continued around them, but in that moment, it felt like the world had gone quiet. "You're a good girl," Uncle Joe said softly. "You don't know what this means to me." Blessing smiled again. "My mother always says, no one is too poor to be kind." He nodded slowly. "Your mother is a wise woman." Little did she know, the man she had just fed was not who he seemed. Underneath the old clothes and dirty shoes was a billionaire. His real name was Chief Joseph Adeniyi, owner of one of the biggest companies in Nigeria. But he had disguised himself and left his mansion for a reason that no one knew yet. And this one act of kindness from Blessing was about to change both of their lives forever. But just as she stood up to leave, something strange happened. Uncle Joe looked at her with a sharp, serious expression. His eyes, once tired, now looked alert. He asked, "Where do you live, Blessing?" She blinked, surprised. "Just around the corner. By Mama Chica's shed over there. Why do you ask?" He looked down, then slowly stood up. "No reason. Just be careful." Before she could ask what he meant, he picked up the empty plate, handed it back to her, and walked away, disappearing into the crowd like smoke. Blessing stood still, confused, the plate still warm in her hands. Something had shifted. But what? She had no idea that a storm was coming. The next morning, the sky was bright, but the air still felt heavy. The sun was up, but it didn't bring much joy. Blessing sat under her mother's umbrella, just beside the small table where they sold groundnuts. Her mother had arranged the small transparent nylons of fried groundnut on the wooden table in neat rows. But even with everything looking nice, very few people came to buy. It was one of those days when the street felt slow. Some shops didn't even open. The noise in the market was quieter than usual. Blessing rested her elbow on the table and placed her chin in her palm. She stared at nothing in particular, her eyes cloudy with worry. Her heart felt heavy. For the past 3 days, things had been really hard. Their sales had dropped. Almost nobody was buying groundnuts. People would pass by, glance at the table, and just keep walking. It was as if the world had forgotten them. Her mother tried to stay strong, smiling at everyone who came close. But Blessing could see that even her mother was worried. "Where is everybody?" Blessing mumbled, not really expecting an answer. Her mother heard her but didn't respond. She just sighed and looked away. It was clear she was thinking the same thing. That morning, they hadn't even had breakfast. There was no money for it. Blessing had shared a small piece of dry bread with her younger brother before leaving home. Her mother had eaten nothing. Just then, someone came walking slowly towards them from the far end of the road. The man's steps were soft, almost like he didn't want to disturb the ground. Blessing looked up and blinked twice. It was Uncle Joe, the same beggar she had given food to the day before. He was wearing the same old clothes, but he looked different. There was something peaceful about his face now. He had a gentle smile, and his eyes looked brighter. "Good afternoon," Uncle Joe greeted, bowing slightly with both hands in front of him. Blessing's mother looked up, surprised to see him. "Ah, good afternoon, my brother," she replied kindly. Blessing also greeted, surprised but happy to see him again. She didn't think he would come back. She remembered how hungry and tired he had looked the day before. "Thank you for yesterday," Uncle Joe said, looking at both mother and daughter. "You gave me food when you didn't have much. God bless you." Then, to their surprise, he reached into his pocket and brought out a squeezed 1,000 naira note. It was folded tightly and looked like it had been in that pocket for a long time. But as soon as he opened it, Blessing caught a strange scent, one that didn't match his clothes or the way he looked. The money smelled sweet, like expensive perfume. Her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't say anything yet. "I want to buy groundnut," Uncle Joe said, holding out the note. Blessing's mother was shocked. She stood up quickly. No, keep your money. Please use it to buy food. I will give you groundnut for free," she said kindly. But Uncle Joe shook his head gently. "No, Mama. Let me buy it. I want to. Please. I have eaten because of you. Let me bless your hand in return." They went back and forth like that for some time. Blessing's mother insisted he should keep the money, but Uncle Joe refused. He was calm, but firm. After several tries to stop him, she finally accepted. She took the money and handed him 2 nylons of groundnut. "Thank you, sir," she said, her voice soft. "May God bless you in return." Uncle Joe smiled warmly. "Amen, and may he bless you more." Then he turned and walked away slowly, whistling a little tune. He didn't look like someone who had begged for food just the day before. Blessing watched him as he walked down the road and disappeared behind a bend. She looked at the money in her mother's hand. Something about it didn't feel normal. Her mother noticed too. "This money smells so nice," Blessing said, reaching out to sniff it again. "It doesn't smell like money from a street pocket. It smells like a rich man's wallet." Her mother laughed a little but looked puzzled. "Maybe someone gave it to him," she said. "A good Samaritan." Blessing nodded slowly, but a small thought sat in her heart like a stone. Something didn't quite add up. How did a beggar who couldn't even stand properly the day before now buy groundnut with a 1,000 naira note, and one that smelled that sweet? Still, they said nothing more about it. Her mother tucked the money into her apron and sat back on the wooden stool. The street was still quiet, the air still heavy. But something about the visit from Uncle Joe left a strange feeling, like something big was about to happen, and they didn't even know it. Blessing sat back down, her hand back on her jaw, but her eyes stayed on the bend where Uncle Joe had disappeared. She couldn't do away with the feeling that there was more to him than met the eye. They didn't know it yet, but the story was only unfolding. Days passed. Each one felt heavier than the last. The small bag of Gary they had at home was almost empty. There was no rice, no beans, and no yam. Business had become worse. Sometimes, they would sit under the umbrella for hours without selling even one sachet of groundnut. People were barely buying. Even the neighbors who used to come and chat had suddenly disappeared. One quiet afternoon, Blessing sat outside their small mud house. She held an empty black pot on her hand. Her eyes were dull, and her lips were dry. Her mother had gone out to ask someone for money so they could cook something, anything. Blessing sat there, staring into the pot like she expected it to fill up on its own. A fly buzzed past her ear. She didn't even move. Her belly rumbled a little, but she ignored it. Her younger brother was asleep inside, hungry but too tired to complain. Blessing leaned her head on her hand, wondering when life would change for them. Would they ever eat well again? Would her mother ever laugh again? Not long after, her mother returned. She was sweating, her scarf slipping off her head, but in her hand was a small nylon bag containing a few food items. "Blessing?" she called weakly. Blessing stood up quickly. "Mommy, did you get something?" Her mother nodded slowly. "Yes. I saw one woman who helped me, but she almost didn't give me the money. She kept asking when I would pay back, and I didn't even know what to say. But in the end, she gave me something." Blessing collected the food items. There was a small cup of rice, a tomato, an onion, and 2 tiny sachets of oil. It wasn't much, but it was something. "Let's cook before your brother wakes up," her mother said, going into the kitchen. Blessing followed her. They started preparing the food quickly. As the pot began to boil and the smell of cooking filled the air, there was a knock on the wooden door. "Who is that?" Blessing asked, walking to check. To her surprise, it was Uncle Joe. He stood there with the same smile on his face, but this time he looked even neater than before. His hair was brushed, and he wore a clean-looking shirt. Blessing was too shocked to speak for a moment. "Uncle Joe," she finally said. "Yes, my dear. I came to visit you people," he replied cheerfully. She called her mother, and Uncle Joe was invited in. They greeted each other and offered him the small plastic stool in the corner. He sat down gently, looking around the small room. "How did you know this place?" Blessing asked with both hands on her waist. "Nothing is hidden under the sun, you know," he replied, smiling, and Blessing smiled back, returning into the kitchen. In the kitchen, Blessing's mother whispered sadly to her daughter, "The food is too small. How are we going to share it?" Blessing looked at her mother, then looked toward the sitting room where Uncle Joe sat smiling. She made a decision. "Mummy, give him my own portion." "I'm fine," she said softly. Her mother looked at her with tears in her eyes. "But you haven't eaten since morning." "I'm okay," Blessing insisted. What they didn't know was that Uncle Joe had heard every single word. He sat quietly in the next room, pretending not to hear. But in his heart, he was touched deeply. They brought him the food in a small white plate and handed him a spoon. At first, he shook his head gently. "No, please. I am okay already. Please add it to yours," he said. But Blessing smiled and held out the plate. "Please eat, Uncle Joe. We're okay." Uncle Joe took the plate slowly. "Thank you," he said in a low voice. He ate quietly, and when he finished, he stood up and thanked them again. Then he left, walking away into the warm afternoon sun. A few days later, something very serious happened. The woman who gave Blessing's mother money came to their house. She had loaned Blessing's mother the money to buy food just a few days ago. At first, the woman was very calm. She greeted Blessing's mother and then quietly asked, "Please, do you have my money?" Blessing's mother stood there, her hands shaking. Her eyes moved quickly, looking for words to say, but nothing came out. The truth was, she didn't have the money. She hadn't made any sales since that day, and there was no money left at all. Her mouth opened slowly as if to speak, but no words came. She looked down at her hands and sighed heavily. The woman repeated herself, this time with a little more edge in her voice. "I need my money. You said you would bring it in 2 days. It's past that now." Blessing's mother tried to explain. "Please be patient with me. Business has been very slow. I don't have the money yet, but I will pay you back soon. I promise." But the woman was no longer calm. Her face grew hard, and her voice got louder. "Promise? You made that promise when you took the money. How many more promises will you make? Do you think I pluck money from trees?" She started shouting. Blessing and her younger brother were sitting nearby, watching the scene unfold. Blessing stood up and ran to her mother. She held her mother's hand and begged the woman, "Please don't shout. We will pay you. Please give us some more time." But the woman turned to Blessing and shouted, "Keep quiet, little girl. I need my money, not your begging." Blessing stepped back. Her heart was beating fast. Her mother fell to her knees, tears welling up in her eyes. She joined her palms together and said, "Please, please, I beg you, just a little more time." But the woman was unmoved. She placed her hand on her waist and shook her head in anger. "I'm not a charity. If you don't pay me by tomorrow, I will take something from your house. Anything I can use to get my money back." Tears began to run down Blessing's mother's cheeks. Her lips trembled as she cried. Blessing and her little brother looked at their mother, and their hearts broke. It was too much for them to see her so helpless. Then, without thinking too much, Blessing stood up straight and said, "I will come to your house tomorrow. I'll help you clean your compound. I will wash your clothes, sweep, and fetch water. I'll do anything. Let me work for 1 week in place of the money." The woman turned and looked at her, surprised. "You? You want to work for me?" Blessing nodded. "Yes, I'll come every morning and do chores. Please don't make my mummy cry anymore." The woman paused for a while. Then she said, "Fine, you will start tomorrow." She turned and walked away. Blessing's mother looked at her daughter, shocked. "Blessing, no. You can't go and work like that. It's too much for you." But Blessing smiled through her own tears and said, "Mummy, let me do it. I want to help. I can't stand seeing you cry." The next day, Blessing began going to the woman's house every morning. She swept the compound, washed clothes, fetched water from a far distance, and even helped the woman cook. It was hard work. Her hands began to swell. Her feet ached. But she didn't complain. Each time she thought about her mother crying, she kept going. While Blessing was away, her mother sat at her small stall under the big umbrella, trying to sell groundnut. The sun was hot, and customers were few. She looked tired and sad, her eyes always turning to the road, hoping to see her daughter returning safely. A few days later, while Blessing's mother was still at her stall, someone walked toward her. It was Uncle Joe, the 2-year-old beggar. He had a smile on his face, just like always. He greeted her politely and asked her how she was doing. "Good afternoon, Ma. How is business today?" Blessing's mother gave a weak smile. "It's not been easy, Uncle Joe, but we thank God." Uncle Joe looked around. "Where is Blessing? I didn't see her at your stall." At that moment, the pain in her heart returned. She sighed and said, "She's not here. She's working in someone's house." Uncle Joe was surprised. "Working? Where?" Blessing's mother looked at him and began to explain. She told him everything that happened, how the woman she borrowed money from came and shouted at her, how Blessing begged to work for the woman just to stop her mother from crying. As she spoke, her voice shook. Uncle Joe listened carefully. His smile slowly faded. He felt something heavy in his chest. His heart broke. He was quiet for a long time, just nodding as she talked. He stared at the ground for a few seconds, then looked up with a forced smile. "Blessing is a very good girl," he said softly. "Yes, she is," her mother replied with tears in her eyes. Uncle Joe stood there, looking like he wanted to say more. He opened his mouth to speak but stopped. A thought came to his mind. Should he tell her the truth now? Should he reveal who he really was? He almost said it. He almost told her that he wasn't really a poor beggar, but a billionaire testing human kindness. But then he stopped. Not now, he thought. Not yet. He smiled again, even though it didn't reach his eyes this time. "I will check on you again soon," he said, turning to leave. "Okay. Thank you, Uncle Joe," Blessing's mother said. As he walked away, his mind was full of thoughts. He kept thinking about Blessing, that poor 9-year-old girl who gave up her own food, who offered to work just so her mother wouldn't be sad. His heart burned. He had never met anyone like her before, and right then he made a quiet promise to himself. "Very soon," he whispered, "they will smile again. They just don't know it yet. But for now..." He walked away with a fake smile, pretending to still be the beggar everyone thought he was, but his heart was heavy. He couldn't stop thinking about what she had just told him. He found a quiet corner nearby and sat down slowly on a short cement block. He sighed deeply and held his head in his hands. The pain in his chest felt so heavy, it was as if someone placed a rock inside him. After a while, he reached into the pocket of his oversized, dirty trousers. He brought out a phone. But this was not just any phone. It was a very expensive one. It was shiny and clean, completely different from his clothes and appearance. Nobody ever saw him with this phone because he always hid it. He didn't want people to know who he really was. He looked around to make sure no one was watching. Then he quietly made a phone call. As the phone rang, he stared into the distance. His eyes were red, but he didn't cry. He was too used to hiding his feelings. When the person on the other end picked up the call, Uncle Joe spoke in a very calm voice. "Get everything ready. I'll let you know when to move. I'll send details soon." He ended the call and sat still again, thinking deeply. Meanwhile, not too far from where he sat, Blessing was walking back home. She was so tired. Her back ached, her legs felt like they would fall off, and her hands were shaking. She had just finished a long day of sweeping, washing, and cleaning in the house of the woman her mother borrowed money from. Every part of her body was sore. She dragged her feet along the dusty road, carrying a small bag that held the rags she used for cleaning. Uncle Joe looked up from where he sat and saw her. His heart broke into pieces. Her dress was dirty, and her face looked pale. She was sweating so much, and it was clear she hadn't eaten well. He wanted to stand up. He wanted to call her and speak to her. He wanted to tell her the truth. But again, he stopped himself. He just watched quietly, his lips pressed tightly together. Blessing finally reached her mother's groundnut stall. Her mother had been sitting there waiting and worrying. The moment she saw Blessing, all the strength left her body. She stood up and hugged her daughter tightly, and without saying a word, tears rolled down her cheeks. "My child, you look so tired," she whispered. Her voice was shaky. She wiped Blessing's face with the edge of her wrapper. "I'm so sorry, my daughter. I wish I could take this pain away." Blessing tried to smile, but her eyes were also wet. "I'm okay, Mama. I'll do it again tomorrow. Don't worry." But her mother couldn't take it anymore. She burst into loud tears, holding Blessing tightly like she was trying to protect her from the world. People passing by looked at them with pity, but they didn't understand the full story. They didn't know the pain, the hunger, the sadness they were facing every day. From the corner where he sat, Uncle Joe saw it all. His eyes burned. He wanted to scream. He wanted to run to them and help, but something inside him held him back. He stood up, wiped his eyes quickly, and began to walk away. His mind was made up. Days later, Uncle Joe returned in a Cybertruck with bodyguards. They parked in front of Blessing's mother's house. People gathered. Blessing couldn't even recognize him when she saw him. He told her his real name and the reasons behind his actions, and from that day, their lives changed. He bought Blessing's mother a house, and they married in grand style. Did you enjoy this story? Kindly let us know where you are watching from. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel.